What's up, gamers? Beaversrock here, and in this video I'm going to be talking about some MMOs that I've played over the years, and what makes them good in my eyes. We're going to be talking about two games today, since they're what I've played recently and have clear thoughts of. Those two games are World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy XIV. Subscribe if you like the video, or you just feel like it, and let's get into things. Let's start with World of Warcraft, since it's the one I have the most experience with. I'm going to talk about three things for both games, and that is combat, gear acquisition, and other players in the community. To explain that a bit more in depth, combat is basically how it feels. Gear acquisition is fairly self-explanatory, and I'm going to be talking about the things you might expect when interacting with other players. WoW has the best combat out of all the MMOs that I've played. These are some big words to say right out the gate, but hear me out. What I look for in combat is two specific things: responsiveness and speed. While animations and weight also matter, they don't matter as much as those two things. I want to hit fast, and I want it to happen when I want. Which is why, when Pillar of Frost was on the goddamn GCD, I stopped playing Frost Death Knight and mainly played my Blood Death Knight. And if you don't know what a GCD is, I'll explain it to you right now. GCD stands for Global Cooldown, and is how long you have to wait to use your next ability. So, you use an ability, probably to attack, and then you have to wait 1.5 seconds, because that is the global cooldown in WoW, and after those 1.5 seconds are up, you can use the next one. It's fairly simple. Some abilities have a shorter GCD, but generally it's 1.5 seconds. Having such a short GCD can be an issue since you have to click so many buttons quickly. So if you have any issues with your hands or wrists, maybe consider a caster class. They are slower by the fact you need to cast abilities, but there's still a good amount of buttons to press. I don't have any experience with raiding in Shadowlands or Dragonflight since lol Shadowlands. And with Dragonflight, I've been interested, but I just don't want to commit to a consistent schedule, so I just haven't. I have gone into a pug once, right before the weekly reset, and killed 2 bosses on normal in Vault of the Incarnates, but beyond that, I'm just a casual. I raided back in Legion, which was alright, but our guild leader kept pushing us to do heroic without fully completing normal mode in Nighthold and Tomb of Sargeras, so like, we could kill the bosses, yes, but it certainly could have been easier had we finished normal and then gone to heroic, and maybe the raid team wouldn't have fallen apart before Argus came out. Boss fights in WoW are somewhat chaotic, in my opinion, but once you know what to do, they become less chaotic. You do still need to pray that the other people know what to do, though. Despite that, I can confidently say that I could recommend WoW solely based on how fun the combat is. For me, at least. But let's talk about something that isn't as good as the combat. Gear acquisition. As with all RNG systems, this is either amazing or terrible, depending on your luck. They have tried to alleviate these issues with the existence of the Great Vault, which gives you a piece of gear from a variety of choices based on the activities you did during the week, as well as the Creation Catalyst, which lets you upgrade gear into tier set pieces being stronger pieces of gear that work together, but otherwise, all gear is gotten as drops from bosses, chests, events, world quests, which, again, can be good depending on your luck. But then again, You can get your third pair of shoulders that you don't need, since you already have a really good pair of shoulders that realistically can only be replaced by 1 or 2 specific pieces, and so you have to get rid of them since you don't need them. Scenario from a friend, by the way. Now let's talk about the other players. WoW has a large variety of players. While Final Fantasy has a lot of overlap for interests between players, from what I've seen at least, WoW doesn't. I don't know if that's because of how old WoW is, and so there's a sizable age discrepancy between some players, or if it's just a coincidence. It really could just be anything. That people have different interests. It's probably just a coincidence. This isn't particularly important in the grand scheme of things until you get to the point of organized play, but I don't know enough about that to talk about it, so I won't. All I will say is good luck. What I want to talk about is mentality. A good amount of players that I've played with, too many in my opinion, are quitters. That's the simplest way I can put it. Basically, in dungeons and raids, everything could be going well. Everyone's pumping out the damage, no one's died yet, but as soon as something goes bad, and we end up wiping just because a silly little mistake happened because someone was like not paying attention or something, just once, the first time, they leave. Most of the time, however, this is a non-issue, and you simply complete the dungeon, everyone leaves, and you never see them again. Just like how you're never going to see this section of the video again. Unless you rewatch this for some reason, of course. But I mean, hey, I appreciate that. Final Fantasy XIV. An enjoyable game that I want to do high-end content in, but I want to do it with my friends rather than pugs, and that's where scheduling issues come in, but that's not what we're talking about. Combat in Final Fantasy XIV is fun, but it feels a bit lackluster at times. I played 2 classes for reference, Dark Knight and Reaper. I've got a type. Final Fantasy has a slower paced combat compared to WoW because of the longer GCD being 2.5 seconds, but when everything comes together it flows very well and you don't notice how much slower it is. I think the reason for this is because of how the fights are designed. You have to move a good amount more than in WoW, so with a longer GCD there's less downtime to worry about. But I'm not a game dev, so those are just my thoughts. I really just have one issue, and that is that some abilities animation lock you. There are some abilities that are completely off the GCD, which are referred to as OGCDs. I hope you can tell what that means based on context clues, but if you can't, it stands for off global cooldowns. And they're normally used between your normal abilities for more damage. You can use 2 OGCDs between every GCD, or at least that's what I like to do depending on the abilities that I need to use. But I think most of the time you just use 1 OGCD between every GCD. But sometimes if I press my abilities too fast, it just does the first ability I press without doing the second ability, because the first ability animation locks me for like a second, and so the second one doesn't go off, and now I'm kinda screwed. And I know what you guys are gonna say. You guys are gonna say it's a skill issue. And yes, I agree, it's a skill issue. So shut it. But like, you do have to somewhat agree with me that it's at least annoying, yeah? Good. I very much enjoy the boss fights in Final Fantasy XIV, and how it feels like a dance you have to learn. The boss fights are scripted, is the best way I can put it. They do things in certain orders, and they don't particularly deviate from that. So, less chaotic than WoW, but depending on the mechanics and how many abilities go out, it can get chaotic, so be warned. I would say the boss fights in Final Fantasy are more enjoyable than the boss fights in WoW. Let me know if you disagree, and give me some reasons why. I'm interested in what people think. The best and worst thing about Final Fantasy XIV is how you get gear. You get gear by purchasing it with a currency called tomestones, which you gain from doing virtually any max level activity. This is good because you are protected from experiencing bad luck like you would have to deal with in WoW. You play the game and you can get the gear that you want hassle-free for the most part. At the same time, this is bad because to get the most tomestones in a day, you need to do every single daily activity. But what if you don't want to do a specific daily? There are about 6 different things you can do. I'm doing this off of memory since I don't feel like opening the game right now. Max level dungeons for 1, leveling dungeons, trials, raids, alliance raids, and PvP. There could be more, but you know, memory. The only ones I personally enjoy doing out of these are max level dungeons, trials, and raids. I don't do the other ones unless I do it with my friends when they invite me. I don't do leveling dungeons because they have the risk of sinking your level all the way down to 15. So, all my cool buttons that I like, gone. Ashes. Kaput. It sucks. And I don't do alliance raids because alliance raids are just Crystal Tower or World of Darkness. If you haven't played Final Fantasy XIV, you don't know what I'm talking about, but if you decide to, you will know. You will understand. And PvP is actually enjoyable sometimes, but only with friends, in my opinion. If the PvP daily were crystalline conflict instead of frontlines, I'd enjoy it more. I've gotten kind of off track though. Anyway, I usually craft my gear myself, since I would literally rather spend my time waiting for the timed gathering nodes to spawn, go gather those materials, make the stuff, to then make the pieces of gear. Sadly, some materials for the gear are bought with tomestones, but, hear me out, I can just buy those tomestone materials off of the market board, which is the auction house equivalent. Or I can make a deal with my friends to get them to buy them for me. Now, for the thing I've been dreading. The Final Fantasy XIV community is a cult. That is the easiest way to describe it. From what I know and have experienced, a lot of the players are fanatics, and if you try to critique the game, they go haywire. Obviously, not all players are like this, but it's more common than you would think. There are also some of the most hyper-casual players in this game that I've ever seen. Like, I would describe myself as a casual player, although in reality some might say semi-casual, but I don't really like the terms semi-casual or semi-hardcore. It leaves a lot of stuff open to interpretation. But some players are hyper-casual, and what that means is they're toxic. I don't want to get too accusatory or mean or other words that mean similar things to toxic myself, but these hyper-casuals are some of the most rude players I've interacted with. I know, I should let people enjoy the game how they want to. I get it. But all these guys do is sit around in the city or their home if they have one, and whenever they do any battle content, it's like watching a chicken with its head cut off. I am not asking for them to be god tier players. I am simply asking them to play with their monitor turned on with the game open. And I desperately wish I could tell you guys about the players that do Savage content, but I haven't done enough Savage content myself, so I haven't interacted with them enough. From what I have experienced, I can tell you it's a mixed bag of helpful people that will let you know what you did wrong and help fix it, as well as people that will kick you immediately for messing up one time. So, all in all, just like WoW. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm not used to making these types of videos yet, so it's not as good as I would have liked, both in script and in editing, but I will continue making them, and I'll get better at it. Thanks for watching, and if you feel like it, you should subscribe. I'll see you next time, gamers.